What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Run Pure Sports Morning Show. I am your host, Mangone. We are here talking some day baseball, and we got some night basketball too, a nice little 3-game slate. If you want that content, you can get it over at Run Pure Sports on the premium side, hang out with JSU and Big T. I know Big T had a nice little night last night, so you do not want to miss out on those winners. So go over to Run Pure Sports now. Sign up if you have not. We're here to talk some day baseball. We got golf going on as well. It's a good time over here at Run Pure Sports. Let's go over to you, DC. How are you doing, and how excited are you for some day baseball?
I'm good. Yeah, early out here in Denver, 9 o'clock. That's early for me. Not generally a morning person, but happy to be one on the Mangone and Friends show today for sure. 9-game slate that does start early, 12:35 Eastern time, lock time. So that's an hour and a half from now. So yeah, a lot to talk about. A lot of low totals out there, Mangone. I was looking over the slate. It's like, what, half the teams have a team total below 3.3. I think that's a reflection. We've talked about a lot that the baseball seems dead, and also it's just not warming up, right? We're almost to May, but a lot of these places are 40, 50 degrees, a lot of wind blowing in. So I do think, and a lot of pretty good pitchers on the mound today too. So I do think it's going to be a tough day for offense. We've seen that on, frankly, most of the slates so far this year. So I'm hoping the baseball livens up a little bit as the weather warms up. Maybe they switch out the baseball and we get some more offense, because pitchers duels are fun, but not when it's like every game. You know what I mean? And scrub pitchers are having great days time and time again. So yeah, we'll see. But yeah, happy to have day baseball for sure. Got to give congratulations to the man member, obviously, who was just on an epic heater. What, another $100,000 win last night. He had your pitcher of the day, Joe Ryan, in there, and mine, Jake Junis, who came and delivered for a good performance. The Angels went off for him, so was happy to see that. I know you got close to a live final seat, and you took it out on the people this morning. You must have been a little upset that the live final seat didn't come through. I saw you trolling. What was it? PGA Tour Communications. John Rahm has withdrawn. It was the first thing I saw when I woke up this morning. Tons of replies in the chat. CSU Ram wishing bad karma upon you for I assume this was after lock that you delivered the news that Rahm had, the fake news that Rahm had withdrawn.
Yeah, so DC, I wasn't planning on waking up for the golf overlay. I was like, I don't really care. It's the Mexico Open, but my body just said at 6:30 it's time, and I looked out and I said, all right, I'm gonna roll over for 15 minutes, grab the laptop, enter the overlay, and then just fall right back to sleep for an hour. And then I had to hit the bathroom, and I was like, you know what? The idea came to me. I said, I'm gonna stay up here. I'm gonna look at some day baseball. And I'm going to do this and have a good time. And I did get worried at first. Davis Maddock had a comment in there that was starting to out-ratio me. It was very hurtful. And I was like, if I get out-ratioed by Davis Maddock, then it's a bad start to the day. But we ended up getting it home. So CSU Rams tilted. We got DB tilted. We got them all tilted. So you love to see it.
What was it, post-lock that you tweeted it?
Yeah, right when it locked. So yeah,
Okay,
I went for the went for the morning dump, right? And I just grabbed the computer and I started typing away, and I copy and pasted one of the WDs that they did in the past. I went as far as to go to the alternatives. I typed in the alternatives, like who are the guys that are waiting to just like jump in there if there's a WD, and I found that Ted Potter was one of the alternatives. So wow. I went that far.
That's some deep research. I usually don't go quite that far when I'm trolling. We do have the NFL draft tonight too, so we could see DC busting out the Booger account or maybe other accounts. I don't want the bad CSU karma to come get me. If you really wanted to piss some people off, you'd tweet the withdraw like 5 minutes before lock, but then you'd get some real angry folks who took John Rahm actually out of their lineups, and
that's messing with people's money, DC.
Yeah,
That's a little too far. You wait for the lock. I think that was the right way to go about it. And then DC, the other thing too, I got worried. I noticed I had lost a follower, but then I gained like 3 or 4. And I was like, you know what? We got rid of the weak and we gained some of the strong. So that's how we do it, right?
Yeah, you got to weed them out. I almost always lose followers when I do the impersonation. People just you gain some for sure, but you lose some. But listen, anyone unfollowing me for that stuff, nah, we don't need them anyway, so it's no big deal.
Exactly. You definitely got to do something for the draft tonight. I'm trying to think of something good you can do. You should do. The only thing is you got to watch, because like if you do like Schefter or something, that's why Booger is safe. I think you'll be okay. But the Schefter one's a tough one.
No, yeah, I'm not going the Schefter impersonation route until I can get some personal confirmation from Mr. Musk himself that won't result in banning. But Booger, that seems to be a fair game. I mean, I've spent many hours over the course of the years impersonating Booger. Have never had so much as a warning about it. So yeah, hopefully that's in the free and clear tonight.
Yep. Grab a couple drinks, watch the draft, and
you need drinks if you're going down the Booger route. You can't just be stone sober doing that. That doesn't work for me.
Oh, for sure. Well, it was a fun time, and hey, we got some fun stuff to talk about here with the MLB slate. I'm excited to get your thoughts on it because DC, like I said, when I got up, I was like, hey, there's morning baseball. If I want to take a nap, I could do it right after lock or something. So I was like, let me just look at the baseball slate. And I opened it up and I said, I don't want to look at the baseball slate anymore. It's not my favorite. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Hitting is kind of rough. Give me like your first overview when you look, because when I looked, it was like, I like the Astros again. I thought about jumping on them. I thought, oh, do we fire with the Yankees against Zimmerman, who's looked good? It's just definitely not the most exciting slate. Kind of feels like some of the ones we've had lately, right? There's some decent pitching, and then we know the ball's been, just not moving at all, and the offenses just haven't been great, except there's, just a couple of home runs here and there.
Did I lose you there?
Yeah, maybe you lost me for a second.
Yeah.
I'll make sure my Ethernet cord's plugged in, but I was basically asking, give me an overview of the slate.
Yeah, kind of touched on it at the top of the show, where just a ton of really low team totals. I think it's over half the teams are below 3.5 runs, which is kind of unprecedented. You do have a lot of pretty good pitchers, like no one that I would maybe call a true ace. I mean, Justin Verlander obviously once was. Zach Wheeler, I have some concerns about him. The hard part, like you mentioned, it's hard to find offense, and I think that we're going to see ownership, especially for a pretty big slate, right? 9-game slate. I think you're going to see a lot of ownership concentrated around. I assume the Yankees will be the most popular. I believe the only team with the team the only team with a team total over 5 runs. They're sitting at 5.2 against Bruce Zimmerman, who I actually kind of like what I've seen from Bruce Zimmerman so far. You mentioned the Astros. People are going to go there because there's just not very many places to go. I saw, there's an account that does. I forget the name of the Twitter account, but they kind of rate the hitting environments, the stadiums based on the weather, and then obviously just the dimensions of the park and how it generally plays. But like they had the Rays Park, Tropicana Field is like the #1 hitting environment on the slate, just because it's so cold and a lot of places have wind blowing in. So the overview, the 5,000-foot view is that it's just going to be tough to find offense today, especially in unique spots. So like you mentioned, not the best slate in the world. It's also tough too, because there's just so many pitchers you could play, right? I mean, I think you could make a case for 7 or 8 guys for sure, which isn't, my favorite thing either. I like when I can kind of narrow it down to 2 or 3 of my favorites, spread out the offense. So we'll try to get to the bottom of it on the show, but I'm with you where it's a tough one. I don't know what your plan is playing wise. I'm probably only going to play a couple lineups and kind of enjoy a little bit of a day off today personally.
Yeah. I was definitely like considering like what to do with this slate. Do I play like 10 lineups? Do I play 100? Like what do I do? Like, is it 5? I signed up for FanDuel. I did 30 in that $5. Okay. So I might even add more in that. I haven't decided.
Good way to go with so many pitchers to choose from. You can kind of mix it around a little bit.
Yeah. I still don't know exactly what I want to do on DK. Like, thought about entering that $250, 4-entry max. Mm-hmm. That always seems like a fun contest. There's a nice 121. Actually, the 250 sold out. So I guess I'm not playing that. So we'll see what I end up doing. I'll have to pick and decide. Should be a fun slate overall, though. I think I'm going to play more FanDuel. I've been enjoying doing the FanDuel and doing the 4-4 stack. So there's a lot of pitching you can take today, though. So you can mix and match them for sure. Yeah. Let's not even talk about that pitching, though, DC. Because, hey, Justin Verlander. Like, he is at the top, and he's against Texas. And Texas, it's a team that, hey, you can target them if you want, but they're definitely better than they were in the past. Also, the roof could be open, right? That's another thing that could be going on. And there's a lot of good pitching on the slate. Like the Royals have a really low implied total. And I'm going to butcher his name, but Michael, is it Kopech, or how do you say his name?
Kopech, yeah, you got it.
All right, Kopech. He's on the mound. And I mean, the Royals have a very low implied total. Zach Wheeler is 8.3K. I mean, that's a very low price tag for Zach Wheeler. And he gets the Rockies. I know he hasn't been great to start the year. Another guy, Freddie Peralta. Decent pitcher, a pretty good one, and he gets the Pirates. It seems like a Wheeler and Peralta pairing for 7-7 and 8-3. If I told you last year you got him in these spots, you'd be like, that's the absolute stone. So what are you doing with those guys and Verlander at the top? There's just a lot of pitching that you can go to. Even like Tariq Skubal is a good option. Bailey Ober against the Tigers. You can go back to them and target the Tigers. A lot of good options. Like, what's your breakdown here of the pitchers at the top?
Yeah, first I'll say, you're like, there's going to be pitchers a lot of pitchers I think are going to have strong days today, right? So you do need to get 2 good performances from your pitchers, I think, to compete, because there is going to be multiple guys I think who go 20 plus fantasy points. Just the offensive environment is so rough today across the league that you do need to hit on your pitchers, which to me kind of sort of eliminates like the true punt options, right? Like sometimes you can play a 5K pitcher and you're happy to get 12 fantasy points out of them because there's big bats that you want, and maybe you think the rest of the pitching isn't going to go super well. I don't think this is one of those slates. So you do need to hit on 2 at least solid pitchers. Let's start with those aces, quote unquote aces that you mentioned. I've actually got concerns about all 3 of Verlander, Wheeler, and Freddie Peralta, who I think if you looked at this slate, Verlander didn't pitch last year, but in general, those are kind of the 3 biggest names going today. I think that's pretty fair to say. Verlander has been solid through 3 starts. Obviously, a Hall of Fame type pitcher. I do have some concerns about him too, though. Velocity was down a little bit at last start. He did have a big start in his second one, but other than that, hasn't been generating many swings and misses, especially in that last start, like an alarmingly low swinging strike rate for Verlander. I'm not sure quite what to make of it. Obviously, he's coming off a long injury layoff, and gets a decent matchup, right, in Texas. But they do have, to me, like not, at least in comparison to some of the other pitchers that we'll talk about, not quite as good of a matchup as others. Most expensive pitcher on the slate, 10.1K. I assume he'll be popular just with the big name, and again, there's value to be had kind of all over. So I'll probably end up fading Verlander again, only playing a few lineups myself. A fine option, but I think I'll go elsewhere. Zach Wheeler, he had a slow start to spring. I think he might have missed the first turn. No, he made his first turn, but he was pushed back a couple days. And his velocity is way down, along with his whiff rate. He's been below, I think, all 3 starts below 8%. Last year, he was sitting probably 12 to 14%, something like that for Zach Wheeler. So I'm concerned about him too, more so even than Verlander. So I know he gets the good matchup at home against the Rockies. Vegas is not concerned. The Rockies, I think, have the second lowest team total on the slate, sitting at 3.1 right now. So they're believers in Wheeler, but again, I think he'll be popular at 8,300, and I do have enough concerns and enough other pitchers that I like to go elsewhere. And then Freddie Peralta, he's been super wild to start the year, which he can be just in general, really low strike rate for him, one of the lowest in the leagues, walking a lot of guys. They kind of limit him how far he can go into games. Hasn't made it more than 3 starts, 3, 4, and 5 innings, so hasn't gone deep into games. Obviously, gets to pitch in Pittsburgh where it's cold, and against that just truly awful Pirates lineup. So I certainly wouldn't fault anyone for playing Freddie Peralta, but if he has just one bad inning where he's walking guys, throws 25, 30 pitches, it's really going to slow him down from having a big performance. So if he's on his game, he could easily strike out 8 to 10 Pirates and be the SP1 at 7,700. I get it. But those 3 guys, on just a few lineups are going to be fades for me. So I guess we can start out there. And there's just plenty of other options that I don't want to play the guys that I think are going to be popular, and I have some legitimate, at least in my mind, concerns about.
Hey, before we dive into those other pitchers, DC, we got K Fallick in the chat. He says we need a DC weather report for Chicago. So, like, if there's one weatherman that I trust in the industry, it's DraftKings. That's my guy. That's who I want to get my weather info from. So, what do you got here? Obviously, Chicago could have some worries. Michael Kopech, he's a guy that's going to be, someone that we should consider on this slate. And if we can't play him, then obviously there's reasons to be concerned. Also, I love playing the White Sox. You know that, DC, but I don't know if I'm for sure playing them today, but this could maybe want to get me off those bats. I saw Brock in the chat saying he thought the White Sox were sneaky today, so he needs to know about it as well. So what is the weather situation in Chicago?
Yeah, it's dry right now, but certainly rain. I got the radar pulled up just as you were talking there. It does look a little concerning. Going to be a situation certainly to monitor. When's the lock on that game? It's a little later, right?
Yeah, it's a little later.
It is the last lock on the entire slate. Not super late, but 2:10 Eastern time. So you wouldn't be able to pivot, right? If you had Kopech and then it starts in delay or the weather looks increasingly bad. So I would say right now I still would expect it to go, but not a full thumbs up there. Certainly an area of concern. We'll revisit that. We'll know more, in 40 minutes when we end the show. So if I forget, remind me to go back to Chicago and give an update there. But right now, yeah, definitely something to at least be concerned about and to keep in the back of your mind as you make your lineups.
Well, a couple things too. That game starts at 2:10, but the Texas game starts at 2:05. So The thing that's nice about that is if you leave $500 on that team, you have a pivot right to Verlander if you don't have him on your team already. So that's a good way to do it if you like, to be able to get yourself an out. So I think that's probably the best way to do it.
Those are the only two later games, though. Every other game locks at 1:10 Eastern time or earlier, and then those two games are an hour later. So just make sure if you are going to Kopech, I think safe to say leave the salary to pivot to a Verlander. I talked that he's not my favorite on the slate, but obviously a totally fine play. If you are playing Kopech, who I do really like today, by the way, I think he could easily end up being the SP1 if that game goes off without concern. Love his stuff, and like you said, super low total for Kansas City, who hasn't hit all year long, cold weather, all that stuff. So just make sure you are able to pivot to Verlander if you do end up wanting to try to roll the dice on Kopech.
Yeah, we also have boots on the ground, Stevie Boyton in Chicago. So obviously we can hit him up in the Discord chat and ask him about that if you guys want. If you guys could please like and subscribe to the video, it helps us out a ton. 233 watching, so we got 72 likes. Let's get those pushed home. That way we can give out those plays of the day. DC, let's talk about these other pitchers here. Then Tariq Skubal, I mean, he has a pretty good projection, gets the Twins, and the Twins are not a team I'm that afraid of. Yes, some of those righties can get the job done, but they can also strike out with the best of them. You got Bailey Ober, who I already mentioned before. I haven't talked about Jamison Taillon yet, but he gets the Orioles. That seems like a pretty good spot. Chris Flexen has, been pretty decent this year, but do I want to attack Tampa Bay? I think that's one of the big concerns that I see there. Patrick Corbin, he's cheap, always has a long leash. The problem is, does he get the strikeouts or does he just get blown up? He's going against this Marlins team that I think they're kind of sneaky a little bit in tournaments. And then Trevor Rogers, definitely someone I think you could take a shot on at 6.1K if you really wanted to go cheap. I just don't know if I need to go there today. Who are some of the secondary options? Again, you kind of talked about it. These other guys that you mentioned, they're kind of the chalk, and you're not really going to play them. So who are the other guys that you're going to go to kind of replace them in your pitcher pool?
Yeah, I'll start with my favorite pitcher play on the day on DraftKings. That is Trevor Rogers, who has been pretty rough through 3 starts, an ERA sitting near 7, 1.8 whip, averaging 5 DraftKings fantasy points per game through 3 starts. Digging into him, though, I can't really see much of anything to be concerned about. He was awesome in, I think, 2020, and then started out last year really, really well for the Marlins. I think he had a death in the family roughly halfway through the year, missed some time, came back, kind of struggled down the stretch, but he's talked about he just wasn't, quite himself for the rest of the year. So I kind of give him a pass for that. And then, it's been 3 starts. Especially he was fine in 2 of the 3. Had a horrible outing against the Philadelphia Phillies. But even in that start, a lot of the underlying metrics look just fine for Rogers. The velocity is there. I think he's a really, really good pitcher. High strikeout guy, big arm, big velocity from the left side. His slider even looks improved this year to me, even though the results haven't shown it. And yeah, I mean the weather in Washington looks pretty tasty for pitching. It's it's not so cold that you're worried about the pitcher not being able to throw the baseball where he wants, but it does have 15, 16 mile per hour winds blowing in from left field, which is frankly really good for Rogers for both these pitchers, right? Because they're both left-handers. Obviously, both lineups going to be stacked with right-handed bats. Typically, a right-handed home run is going to go out to left field, and the wind's going to knock those down, especially with somewhat cold weather and the way the baseball's flying. So I think it's true for Rogers and Corbin. For a bunch of these guys, I talked about Joe Ryan, a little bit of a aside here. Joe Ryan yesterday, where some of these pitchers who in the past are coming up through the minor leagues early in their careers have been really home run prone. They can just attack the zone at will right now. Like, try to hit it out. It's going to be a fly. It's going to be a fly ball out. I saw just some crazy videos of just it looks like pure home run swings from power hitters that die 10 feet, 20 feet short of the wall. So these pitchers that you might normally worry about the long ball, it's really not very much of a concern, frankly, in most places, in almost every place, especially on this slate. So Trevor Rogers, he is my number one point per dollar guy. You mentioned Mangone, that you don't have to go there. Absolutely, you don't have to. Plenty of other options, and plenty of value bats on a 9-game slate too. But I wouldn't be shocked whatsoever if Rogers ended up as the SP1 overall in the slate. I think he's 2 to 3K underpriced. I mean, I would still be interested in him, honestly, at 9K. So I do like Trevor Rogers. I do like both those pitchers in the Minnesota game. Skubal and Bailey Ober, two pitchers who really do benefit from the current offensive environment. It's cold in Minnesota. Ober has a somewhat similar profile to Joe Ryan, who absolutely dominated the Tigers yesterday, a guy who throws a lot of fastballs, gets a lot of whiffs, but also gives up a ton of fly balls and potentially home runs. But that's, again, and I know I'm repeating myself, it's just not really much of an issue right now. And that's the same thing with Skubal, too, a guy who misses bats, but a lot of hard contact from the right side. No Byron Buxton in the lineup for the Twins today. Huge boost to Skubal. So I like both those guys. I think I slightly prefer Ober pitching at home. I just trust him to throw strikes more, maybe to go deeper into the games. But yeah, Ober, Skubal, Trevor Rogers, three guys that I'm really looking at. And then if the game does look like it's going to play, Michael Kopech up there at 9,600. He looks awesome to start the year, and the matchup couldn't get much better for him home in cold weather against that anemic Kansas City offense. So those are kind of my four guys right now. But obviously you could certainly make a case for, Verlander, Peralta, and who's the other guy that I talked? Oh, Wheeler. Again, I talked about my concerns about those guys. They're not going to be on my lineups. I get if people want to go there. And then, yeah, I think Jameson Taillon is a fine option as well. But really kind of focused on those four for me. That's Trevor Rogers, Ober, Skubal, and Michael Kopech for the White Sox.
Yeah, well, we definitely have some agreements here. I definitely think if I had to pick between like Verlander, Wheeler, and Peralta, I think my lean is just like jamming the Verlander in.
Me too. Yeah, I have Verlander first among those guys for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I really like Ober. I think Ober is my number one, and maybe it's easy because of what Joe Ryan did yesterday, right? But man, this Tigers team, it's a team you can target. They're not that good. Like Derek Hill, Austin Meadows, Robbie Grossman, Javi Baez, and like Javi Baez is one of the scarier guys in the lineup, but he's also great at swing and missing, right? Like, so I think this is a pretty good spot to go Bailey Ober.
I'm not at all scared about Javi Baez. Well, I don't want to talk too much shit on him because then he's going to take our guy deep. But yeah, I'm not really worried about anybody in that Detroit lineup, honestly.
Yep, same. I thought you made up good points with the Taillon. Yep, you can go to him as well. A lot of good options. I see some people talking about Zimmerman in the chat, so I guess talk about him. And also, what about Quintana? He's another guy maybe to bring up because no one's really scared of the Brewers. I know Gary mentioned, and I still haven't seen if there's a Brewer in his lineup. Maybe he's playing some Quintana, but I doubt it. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I would. I have to recommend against Jose Quintana on this slate. A lot of good arms. He is not one of them. I think maybe the worst overall pitcher on the slate. Probably close between him and Perez, Senzatella, Corbin. But yeah, I won't be playing Quintana. I just can't imagine playing him over Trevor Rogers. And you don't need two punts down there. So no Quintana for me. Zimmerman's interesting. I do think you'll see the Yankees be the most popular stack on this slate. I feel reasonably confident in that. It's one of the highest team total. They get it's a right-handed heavy Yankees lineup. They get the lefty and Zimmerman, but Zimmerman's been pretty damn good through 2 starts, including against this Yankees team themselves. Right, he faced them 2 starts ago, made it through 5 innings, blanked them for 5 innings, no earned runs, 6 Ks. The underlying metrics look good for him. Wasn't a guy I was at all high on coming into the year, and I'm still not at all 100% sold, but he's been legitimately good through 2 starts, both results-wise and metrics-wise. And, nobody's going to play him. Everybody's going to stack the Yankees, so you get kind of the double leverage thing going on there with Zimmerman, where if he pitches well, not only is he going to help your lineup, he's going to take down 30-40% of the field with him, probably, that have maybe not that high, 20 to 40% of the field that have Yankee stacks. So that's an interesting play. I think most likely I'll just take the route of fading the Yankees for the most part. But if you're fading the Yankees, it's probably going to be strikeouts, right? That get them. That's kind of the thing with it. So yeah, maybe I'll get a share or 2 of Zimmerman depending on how many lineups I play. I think he's got upside, no question about it. Obviously, could go south for him in a hurry. I mean, if the Yankees do damage, it's going to be via the long ball. That's just how they're built. So it does kind of seem like maybe you want one side or the other. So yeah, I have no problem with anybody playing Zimmerman or stacking the Yankees, frankly, because I do think it's going to be a Zimmerman high strikeout performance or home runs for the Yankees, which are going to be hard to come by most likely on this slate. So if they do it, they're most likely going to be the winning stack. So I can kind of see both sides of the coin on that one.
Yeah, I like the call with Zimmerman, and I won't get you on you for the sprinkle, right? Because you're leveraging, right? That's a little different. He's actually going to be Yankees going to be very high owned today, I think. So
we don't want to be the fence sitters. We don't know if Big T's watching, but we don't want to be the fence sitters this morning.
No, we're not trying to do that. I do want to ask about one more guy, Alex Manoah. A lot of people are talking about him, especially on FanDuel against the Red Sox. Any interest in him, or even like a Tyler Mahle? I think it's a bad idea to do Mahle. I'd rather go the Padres than Mahle. I think you agree on that, though. What's your thoughts on Manoah?
Yeah, really good pitcher. I'm only playing DraftKings, so honestly, I hadn't looked into him too much. So is he the most expensive pitcher or close to it on FanDuel? Yeah, he's been really good. Red Sox aren't scary right now. Yeah, not on the DK slate, like I said, but he makes a lot of sense on FanDuel. No problem with him at all.
All right, and we got someone in the chat named DraftKings Observer. Maybe it's Big T on the burner account. He says, DC on the Yankees, time to get off them now. It seems like he's trying to poke the bear, DC. I think that's Big T on the burner account there.
It could be, but I'm not really all that in on the Yankees, so yeah.
All right, well, we'll have to see. It's windy in New York, Corey Rizzo says, so we got boots on the ground everywhere, it looks like. Guys, if you could please hit the like, subscribe to the channel, helps us out a ton. We appreciate it. I can go through our schedule really quick if you guys want, just for the day, just so I can give you the updates. But hey, if you subscribe to the channel, then you just get notified when it goes live. So some changes to the schedule today. 4:45 p.m. is the SaberSim show, not at 1 p.m. because we don't have the MLB show. So be sure to check that out on the YouTube channel. Then 6 o'clock, we got the final countdown show with Big TJSU breaking it all down. And then at 9 o'clock tonight, we got the PGA Round 2 Showdown, so be sure to check that out. Should be a fun time. You guys do not want to miss out on that. DC, before we kind of dive into the positions, which when you talk about pitching for this long, you kind of breeze through the positions a little faster. I'm sure we will. Stacks. Who are they today? Because I'm struggling. I kind of like the Marlins against Corbin. We liked them a little bit yesterday. I think you can go back to them. There's definitely some power and pop, and it's a good ballpark. Speaking of good ballparks, Cincinnati and the Padres, Great American Small Park. Nick Martinez and Tyler Mahle, we didn't express interest in really playing those guys. So yeah. I think those are some bats that we should have some interest in. You could definitely tear up Austin Gomber with a lot of these righties. I think that these Phillies could make some sense. We discussed the Yankees. And then I like the Astros. I know the roof is closed, so I'm curious to see if that affects anything. But I am not scared of Martin Perez for sure. Curious to hear what your thoughts are on the stacks. My favorite, I think, right now I'm leaning is this Marlins one because I just don't think a lot of people will play them. And I can just go back to the well on those guys against a guy like Corbin who can give up the long ball.
Yeah, if it was good hitting weather in Washington, D.C., I would be very in on the Marlins. Might still end up there just because the matchup with Patrick Corbin so good. I thought he had a chance to bounce back this season after a horrific 2021, but it's just not happening for him. Can't miss any bats, which is when he's not getting swings and misses, it gets ugly in a hurry. But I am concerned about the hitting environment in DC, 50 degrees and wind blowing in from left field.
Yeah, that's a concern. The only winds blowing out, I should call this out, DC, just so that people know. We got Yankee Stadium blowing out to right field 20 miles an hour. A lot of the places are the winds blowing in, and then there's really not much else blowing out right now.
Yeah. So that's my concern with Miami. I just think it's going to be hard to hit a home run, which that's Corbin's weakness, right? Is he gives up so many long balls, but if those are mitigated, you kind of lose the upside from the stack a little bit. So I still kind of like Miami, like just in comparison to the other offenses though, right? Like, because there's just not that many options. They're certainly one of them. I'm with you on the Astros. They're very high up my list. Martin Perez, we've seen him for so many years now. We kind of know what he is, and what he is a pitcher that we want to stack against in general. I know the roof's closed, like you said, in Texas. That's fine. We'll take an indoor 70-degree windless game, right? That's a good hitting environment, like I mentioned. Same thing in Tampa, where I do like the Rays a little bit. And then, the Yankees, I think, are the interesting one, right? Because you can kind of play it both ways, where it's like I do like what I've seen from Bruce Zimmerman, but, man, wind blowing out to right center field, 20 mile per hour on a short right field fence anyway, like you don't got to do a lot, right? Like we've seen the Rizzo home run, Stanton hit one yesterday that didn't look like that impressive of a swing. Sailed out of there because you get it up there in the winds in Yankee Stadium, especially with the power that those guys have, it's going over the wall, and you can't say that in most places. So a little bit torn on the Yankees. And then I like the Phillies to some degree. Just Senzatella for the Rockies, not any good. No Schwarber in the lineup, which kind of sucks, but that top six still looks pretty good for me from the Phillies. So they're a good option. We know our guy Gary's not a fan of the Brewers, but Quintana, like I said, is one of the worst pitchers on the slate. So I do think the Brewers have a chance to wake up, even though Pittsburgh, pretty horrific place to hit, especially for right-handed power, which is what you want in general against Quintana. So that's not ideal. And then, I think game stacking that Reds game, right? That's another one where it's at least tolerable in terms of the hitting weather there. Obviously, Cincinnati, a good place to hit in general, 55, 60 degrees, kind of a calm day, which makes it one of the best hitting environments on the slate. Tyler Mahle, decent pitcher, but one who has really, really struggled in that ballpark over the last couple of seasons. ERA, all the metrics much higher at home than they are on the road. So the Padres make sense. They're waking up a little bit. I like pretty much all the Padres, frankly, in that lineup, and they're relatively cheap too, outside of Manny Machado. And then the Reds. Nick Martinez, kind of jury's out on what his baseline skill set is. Coming over, I think, from Japan. He used to just totally suck here in the States. Went over to Japan for a couple of years, was good. Got a pretty big contract from the Padres, and has looked okay through 2 starts, but a lot of home runs given up. And last time we saw him in the big leagues, he was awful. There's a reason, he becomes kind of out of the league and pitching elsewhere. So the Padres and the Reds. I know the Reds lineup's not impressive; they've been terrible, but they're really cheap. Naquin 2.9, Pham 2.7, Joey Votto 2.8, right in the middle of that lineup, and even the leadoff guy Jake Fraley 2.2. So you can easily stack the Reds and get any pitchers you want, which I guess makes some sense, and I'm sure will be a somewhat popular route today.
Yeah, for sure. DC, I think some people are saying you said Senzatella, but Gomber, doesn't matter. Same thing. They're both not going to be good pitchers we can attack. But overall, I think this is definitely a spot where, hey, you brought up good points about the Nick Martinez and Mahle.
Is it not Senzatella pitching? I'm seeing that.
No, they're saying Gomber, which that's what I see on my end. So
okay.
Let's see. I'll double check one more time. I mean, I'm seeing Gomber.
Yeah, I see that now. I refreshed. Yeah, that makes me like Philly maybe even a little bit more, and it makes a lot more sense why Schwarber would be out of the lineup too, because Gomber obviously throws from the left side, Senzatella doesn't.
Yeah, and it's a day baseball game, so guys get off sometimes. So let's go to the catcher position now. Let's talk about that. And one guy I'll mention, I don't know if he'll be in the lineup, but I looked up the Astros and I just said, hey, Martin Perez, they've gone up against the Astros enough. Maybe there's some BVP there. And I saw the old 9 for 15 for Martin Maldonado, which, hey, Martin Maldonado is not known as a great hitter. So that is a guy that, hey, if you like the BVP and you want him in the Astro stack, go for it. You got JT Realmuto against a lefty at the top. Seems like a really good option. Probably the best spend up catcher on this slate. DC, what is your thoughts here on the catcher position?
Yeah, if you can get him, I do think JT or Realmuto pretty clearly the top option. No problem at all with Maldonado, as you mentioned. If he's in there at 2,100, I imagine he will be, but we'll see. Obviously, gets the lefty. You want Maldonado against bad lefties, which he gets in Martin Perez. So that makes a lot of sense. I think if you're not on Verlander, I do like Mitch Garver a little bit. Homered again yesterday. Again, Verlander kind of a heavy fastball guy, and Garver has a lot of power. So he makes sense. There's just not very many guys that you really can get excited about here. So you do want, upside if you can find it. Garver certainly has it. Realmuto has it. And yeah, all the way down to the bottom, if he's in the lineup, Maldonado at 2,100, I think is a real strong option as well. Probably avoiding hitters in that White Sox KC game, so Grandal kind of a little bit off the table for me. But yeah, Realmuto for me is somewhat of a priority on this slate.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, he's expensive, but hey, catcher's not great.
You can afford him.
Yeah, I think either going up or down is kind of the move here today. Is there anyone else besides a Maldonado that you see for cheap that you could get some interest in, DC?
I mean, not really. Seattle, he's not cheap, not particularly cheap. Luis Torrens is a decent hitter. Hasn't done much this year, but I think we'll have a good year when it's all said and done. But hitting 3,500 against the Rays, not that exciting.
I give you one more suggestion. He's not cheap though. Is Jorge Alfaro at 3.7 or 3.9 in that ballpark? But Kyle Higagashi or whatever his name is, Higashiko. I don't know his name. Kyle.
Yeah. I mean, any catcher that's got a little pop and in a decent hitting environment's got to be on the table in this slate, right? So yeah, Alfaro and Higashioka, I think are both okay plays too.
Higashioka. That sounds better than whatever I said. So I think you're correct there with that pronunciation. Let's head on over to the first base position. And our boy Stevie Boyton is somewhere just peeling to himself because Ty France is 5'6". So figured I'd at least say that at the top, DC. Stevie is having a good time over there with that. 4-3 Rhys Hoskins against a lefty. Where do I sign, right? That's a really tasty price tag on him. Gurriel was another one of those BVP guys. When I looked real quick, at quick glance, he was up there. But I believe when I saw it too, this would surprise you too. When I saw that BVP, I was kind of laughing. 85 at bats, DC, no home runs for any of those Astros against Martin Perez, which I just thought was funny because somehow he finds a way to just get out of damage, it seems at time. You talk about the cheap Reds. He's hitting cleanup. Joey Votto, 2.8K. I mean, that's something that's kind of appealing. And Patrick Corbin gets a guy in the cleanup spot. Garrett Cooper. I know Garrett Cooper's not somebody you get super excited to play, but he's only 3.3K. There's definitely a lot of different options up and down the board. What are you doing here at the first base position?
Yeah, not sure what to do with Joey Votto. On paper, he's kind of clearly my best point per dollar projection play. I don't know if you saw, he's become very active on Twitter. I think this is his first year with the account. He tweeted his Baseball Savant Statcast page, which is all blue, which means you're in the bottom 20% or something. And he's tweeting about being in slumps, and when you're in a slump, it feels like you can never hit. And this was a couple days ago. I'm like, oh, maybe that means he's going to break out of it, right? He figured something out, but no, still doing nothing. So it's been a horrible, horrible start to the year for Joey Votto, hitting 133 with 0 home runs. But 2,800 in the good park against Nick Martinez. Still willing to roll the dice on Joey Votto. Hopefully he can figure it out soon. So I do like him. Yeah, you mentioned some of those guys in the low threes. You mentioned Garrett Cooper getting cleanup for Miami. That's a good play for sure against Corbin, despite the hitting environment concerns. Keston Hiura, another guy who does have big power and gets Jose Quintana, who's a pitcher that I like to target. So I like him. Another, frankly, both Miami guys, Aguiar and Cooper, both in play. I think I slightly prefer Cooper, but certainly both guys you can look at. Eric Hosmer, if you're on the Padres, I would certainly include him hitting fifth. He's off to a good start. You mentioned Hoskins, I think, is a good way to go. And yeah, you can't overlook Stevie's boy, Ty France, who has been one of the very best hitters in baseball so far. And, 5,600, the price has been justified. I don't know if he can keep up this level of production, but he will get 2 lefties to start the game. Springs, the opener for Tampa, and then they're going to Jalen Beeks, who is a good pitcher, but won't go too long into that game. So, yeah, I have no problem spending all the way up for Ty France. I think you'll get him super low owned, but, man, at this point of the year with how little offense we've seen, with how many guys are struggling, give me the guy that's hitting right now a little bit, right? Like that means something to me. So, yeah, I have no problem if you want to, quote unquote, spend up to get contrarian with a guy like Ty France.
DC, are you telling me hot streaks are possibly a thing?
I'm a believer. I'm a believer.
All right. Just checking. That's all. Yeah. You never know. That's a hot topic on twitter.com as well. And hey, I'm kind of with you, DC. Like, if I can grab a dude that's hitting the ball right now, like, maybe not a bad idea. Because
there's not many of them, you know what I'm saying? So give me the ones that are.
Like Giancarlo Stanton hit a home run yesterday. That dude is notoriously streaky. I don't know if maybe it was just a fluke. Maybe you're getting on the train right away, but it might not be a bad idea to just say maybe the train is starting now with Giancarlo.
Yeah, I'm with you.
All right, let's go to the second base position. Brandon Lau at the top, 5.2K, someone that you can always roster. DJ LeMahieu against a lefty, that's something I'm kind of interested in. If you're playing that Yankees stack, of course you want to kind of get him into your lineups. I think he's a good play. We talked about like Tariq Skubal, so I probably those Twins guys that are always second base eligible and cheap. Yeah. I don't know if I'm really going to go there today.
Not on the Twins today at all.
Yeah, I don't think it's the right spot to, but they're just worth mentioning because their price tags are always pretty good. They're actually not as good as they normally are. So trying to see if there's anything else really. It's just not a great position. I guess you can make a case at the top like Jake Cronenworth against Mlb definitely is probably an appealing option if you have the money to spend. I don't see a lot down in the cheap range that I absolutely love. Like it is a Rougned Odor revenge game, right? Technically. So, hey, if you want to go there and the wind's blowing out to the right field, he could bang one out, but you know how the Odor experience is. It never ends well. What's your thoughts here overall on the second base position? Because it doesn't look too pretty to me.
Yeah, Odor actually not a bad shout there. Hitting fifth for Baltimore. He's got a little speed you can run on Tyone, and then obviously short porch in right field. So he could absolutely get one. So I don't mind that call if you want to go cheap at second. There's not a lot of cheap second basemen that I like in general. He'd probably be the top guy for me. I do think this is a position that you probably want to spend on. You mentioned most of the guys that are piquing my interest. Brandon Lowe at the top. I'm not a believer in Chris Flexen, low ton of power, hitting cleanup for the Rays. I like that. Segura leading off for the Philadelphia Phillies. If you're stacking them up, I would probably include Segura in there. And then, Jake Cronenworth, we talked about him against Molly, hitting second for the Padres. And DJ LeMahieu, I think, is a really strong option leading off for the Yankees. Again, benefits from that wind out to right center field, which is, frankly, where he, does most of his damage. So he specifically kind of benefits from the weather in New York today. It doesn't take much to get one out to right field in New York. Especially with the wind blowing that direction, gets a lefty, which he's historically been much better against. So, LeMahieu, I would assume will be the highest owned guy here. I think that's pretty justified. But you can certainly make the pivot to a guy like Cronenworth, Segura, or Brandon Lau.
All right, before we go to third base, DC, we got 320 watching, 120 likes. So we got to give out those plays of the day, but we need a number. So set the number for me. And also keep in mind, we got like 16 minutes till it's 10 o'clock and 10 o'clock our time, and it locks at 10:35 our time, right? So we have more incentive to kind of pull the plug early. What's our like number we got to get to, DC?
We'll call it 160 today.
All right, 160 it is. I got faith the people. We'll push that home. Let's slide on over to the third base position. And at the top, You talked about Manny Machado. I think he's a good play, but my favorite up at the top is probably Alex Bregman against the lefty and Martin Perez. I think that's a good spot for him as long as he's in the lineup. Josh Donaldson gets a lefty sitting in the 5-hole. I don't think he's a bad option. If you want to go cheap, though, there's a couple guys I think that are a little intriguing on this slate. The one I wanted to mention, I got Birdie in the 1-hole at 2.2K against Corbin, right? That's a pretty good pure punt option if you want to. But here's a power guy that hits the ball during day baseball games a lot. He bangs it out in this park a ton, right? He smacks it in Cincinnati, and it's a day baseball game. It's Colin Moran against Martinez. I know he's in the 8-hole, but he is known for hitting that day baseball home run, DC. What's your overall thoughts on punting the position, or are you going all the way up to the top?
You'll have to forgive me. I wasn't aware of the Colin Moran day baseball narrative, but
he definitely always smacks out home runs during the day. I swear to you, it's definitely a narrative. The chat can confirm for me. I think I'm right on.
I'll take your word for it and bump Colin Moran up the board. I thought you actually were going to talk about the other left-handed third baseman in that same game, same park, obviously, Mike Moustakas down at 2,100 against Nick Martinez. I don't know what to think about Moustakas. I mean, he was awful last year and has been somehow even worse to start this year, one of the worst hitters in baseball so far. So I'll probably take a pass on him. Maybe I'll go to your guy.
If anyone wanted to make a wager on Mike Moustakas versus Colin Moran, I'd let them slide in. I would do the bet.
Okay, it won't be me. I don't want to go against Babe Ruth of day baseball, Colin Moran. But, I think, again, a position where if you can, and part of the reason I like Trevor Rogers, I do think he's going to perform, but he's just so cheap. And there's just not very many hitters I like on this slate. So a couple of guys, all three guys at the top of the first base pricing pool. Machado has been hitting the ball really well. Alex Bregman gets a bad lefty in Martin Perez. And Eugenio Suarez looks like he's having a bounce back year for Seattle. Seattle hitting the ball pretty damn good recently, putting up some runs, gets 2 lefties to start it off. Suarez does. 5K for Suarez, I think is a good option. LeMahieu, obviously you can play him second or third. LeMahieu probably going to be I assume going to be one of the more popular players on the slate, partly because of that multi-position eligibility. But yeah, I want to spend here. I do rank them Machado 1, Bregman 2, Suarez 3, right at the top there. Of course, Donaldson, LeMahieu very much in play. Bobby Witt, a little bit interesting if that Kansas City White Sox game ends up playing fine, just because Kopech really, really struggles to hold runners on. Gave up 10 steals, no caught stealings last year. Witt, one of the fastest players in baseball, will steal bases. So I do like that as kind of a sneaky contrarian play. And then, of course, you can't forget Colin Moran, who hits a home run every day baseball game apparently.
Yep, and I got someone in the chat to confirm, so I'm not crazy.
Okay. One more guy, Alec Boehm for the Phillies, I think is a good play too.
Cool. We got the Astros lineup out. It's McCormick, it's Brantley, Bregman, Alvarez, Gurriel, Diaz, Pena, Siri, and Maldonado. So that is the Astros lineup. DC, let's slide it over to shortstop now. And shortstop, I typically like to spend at this position, but I don't know what I would want to spend on this slate. I'm not excited about a lot of these guys, and we got to save somewhere. The problem is if I want to save at shortstop, I really don't know what to go to. Maybe it's Kyle Farmer against Martinez. I could take a shot on that. Maybe it's Miguel Rojas against Corbin. That wouldn't be bad, but it's really rough here. Maybe it's Mike Brousseau as a power guy against Quintana, but I don't I want to spend I got to save somewhere, right? Maybe it's with Trevor Rogers. I'm able to make the pitching work where I can just spend at every position, but at some point you can't just play every 5K guy, right? You gotta save somewhere. But I just don't know what to save with, and I don't even know what I want to spend on at shortstop. Maybe you can lead me in the right direction. What on earth do we do here at this position?
Yeah, it is a little bit of a rough position. If you do need to save, or you do want to save here, a couple guys that I would consider. My 2 favorite down here are CJ Abrams, top prospect for the Padres. He is hitting 8th, but he's got a little power, a lot of speed. 2,600, and I do like the Padres stack, one of my favorite stacks in general. So he's a solid play. And then I think I like even more than him, Jorge Mateo, really actually a similar profile to to CJ Abrams. Hitting 6 for Baltimore, though. Obviously, good place to hit in New York. I'm not super scared of Tyone. And then Mateo, I think he's leading the league in stolen bases, 7 stolen bases on the season. Tyone, a guy that really does give up a ton of stolen bases. So I would be very surprised if Mateo, if he gets a chance, if he's not off and running, and it's maybe seems crazy to bank on stolen bases, but like you mentioned, this is a really, really thin position, especially at the lower end. So Mateo at 2,600, I think is an interesting play. I bet you'll get him fairly low owned as well. At the top, Wander Franco, to me, kind of clearly the class of the shortstop position on the slate. Gonna have to pay for him 5,700, and I do prefer him slightly when he's hitting from the right side. Gonna hit from lefty to start this game off against Chris Flexen, but he's been fantastic to start the year, so he would be my number one. If you're not on Verlander, I think Corey Seager's got a pretty good chance to take him deep. Verlander, even when he's on his game fully, he does give up a lot of home runs. Seager would be the most likely guy in that lineup, in my opinion, to do that kind of damage. And then, if you're on the Brewers against Quintana, which makes some sense to me, Willy Adames, he's got 4 home runs on the year, gets the lefty hitting second. And I'll throw in Jeremy Pena. I know he's hitting 7th, but I really like what I've seen from him so far. And certainly Martin Perez, in a controlled environment weather-wise, I do like the Astros quite a bit. So Pena, 4,800. People won't want to pay that just because he's hitting lower in the lineup. But on this slate, I have no problem going there. So I do like Jeremy Pena quite a bit as well.
Yeah, I assume in my Astro stacks, I'll have Pena because I'll have Maldonado to at least punt a spot. So that'll help. So I think that'll
play Siri down there at 2,800 too. So you can do a little bottom of the order, maybe wrap it around with Chas McCormick up top.
Yep. No, who doesn't love a good reach around? You got to get the reach around stack involved always. DC, let's talk about the outfield. But before we do that, let's look at the likes. We need 15 more. So let's get 15 more. And then we're going to talk about the outfield. We'll go over the pitching one last time, just a quick recap. Then we'll do a recap of the stacks. And then we're either getting on out of here or we're doing the plays of the day. So we got 8 minutes. DC, we can crank through the outfield, I think, pretty quick. Let's start at the top. Aaron Judge against the lefty. I'll never say no. I think it's a good play. Giancarlo Stanton, we talked about maybe jumping on him. I know he was cheap on FanDuel. He's 4.8 on DK against the lefty. I can't not mention Yordan Alvarez, which, hey, he smacks anyone. Lefty, righty, it doesn't matter. Nick Castellanos, 5.4 against Gomber against the lefty. That's another good one. There's definitely a ton of really good options at the top. If we go a little bit cheaper too, DC, there's some good options here as well. You got to make an argument like Andrew McCutchen hitting like first, 3.6K against Quintana. I won't ignore that. I won't ignore Avisel Garcia at 3.7. I think he's a good option against Corbin. Trent Grisham hitting first at 3.3 and Great American Small Park. You can't ignore that. You also got Tyler Naquin and Tommy Pham. Those are 2 Reds that are pretty cheap, hitting towards the top against Martinez. And we talked about the Reds having some cheap price tags. So there's a lot of options up and down the board here at the outfield position, DC. Who are some of the guys that you like?
Yeah, you hit on quite a few of them. At the top end, to me, some of the top overall bats. I mean, you have to include Stanton and Judge, right? They're just, if you're talking home run probability, those guys have to be if not at the very top, near the very top of the list. So I do think Zimmerman could surprise some people, but on this slate where there are just so few options, Judge and Stanton have got to be certainly in play. I do have Nick Castellanos as a top overall outfielder against the lefty. Austin Gomber, we've just got a massive sample size of Castellanos just crushing lefties. He's off to a pretty solid start. So he's way up the list. You mentioned Alvarez. I think that's a good way to go. One of my favorite plays, though, on this slate, Cedric Mullins against Jameson Taillon for a number of reasons. One, Mullins, he's that power speed combo, 30-30 player, 30 home runs, 30 stolen bases last year, 3 stolen bases on the year already. He's going to run on Taillon almost certainly if he gets the chance. You've also got the short porch. He's a lefty out in right field for New York, and the wind blowing out that way. 4K for Mullins. Definitely going to be in my personal cores. Maybe the play of the day. We'll see. Cedric Mullins, I really, really like him. The Milwaukee guys, we talked about liking Willy Adames. I like both McCutchen, who hasn't done too much this year, but historically has smashed lefties, and the underlying metrics for him against lefties, very, very small sample size, look really good. It's possible his power is just kind of gone as he ages, but it doesn't look like it. And Quintana is a guy I want to target. So I do like McCutchen and Renfroe sitting there back to back, 3,600, 3,500 for McCutchen, Renfroe. You can throw Adames in there. Brewers are growing on me a little bit, despite not an ideal hitting environment, obviously. In Pittsburgh, you mentioned Grisham, 3,300 against Tyler Mahle. Of course, he's in play. My guy, J-Rod, Julio Rodriguez, 3K minimum, or 3K flat, rather, hitting 7th, but he's turned it on recently. No home runs yet, but those are coming soon. And he's running wild on the base pass too, which, again, in the summer months, that won't be something that we necessarily focus on so much. But right now, where offense is so hard to come by, it is something that I consider fairly heavily. Tampa Bay, Margot hitting first against Flexen makes sense, and so does Josh Lowe, a rookie. Hasn't done a lot yet, but 2,800 hitting 6th, I think makes sense. So, yeah, this is by far the deepest position. I mean, Chas McCormick, you've got Tommy Pham down there. Yeah, if you're playing a lot of teams, I would definitely be mixing it up in the outfield, kind of, depending on which stacks you've got and all that.
All right, let's head on over to the stacks then. Definitely don't want to ignore this part because people love talking about the stacks. DC, my stacks right now, it looks like I'm definitely going to be on Houston. I know that. I feel like I'm definitely going to target the Great American Small Park a little bit and grab the Padres. And I like the Marlins a little bit too. I think even though Corbin's there, I know, yes, his issue is home runs, but there's some good bats there. So I'll definitely take shots on that. My two favorites, no doubt, are probably Astros and Padres. That'll probably be my most exposed ones. How about you, DC? Who are your favorite stacks?
Yeah, Astros number one for me as well. Two, I will go. I think I might end up rolling with the Brewers today against Quintana. Just not a believer whatsoever in his skills. And all those right-handed bats should do some damage. I specifically like the top 5 of that Brewers lineup. And third, could bust and will be popular, but to me, the Yankees clearly have the most upside on the slate. If Zimmerman doesn't have it, it's gonna be home runs in Yankee Stadium, and I don't think there's gonna be many home runs in general on this slate. So I can't ignore the Yankees. They're expensive. They're gonna be popular. Zimmerman has shown some skills, but when there's 18 teams playing and you can clearly identify one that has the most upside on the slate, hard for me to ignore that. So I do like the Yankees quite a bit as well.
Yeah, Yankees definitely in play. We'll not completely ignore them. Let's get the pitchers. My favorite for sure, if you're coming in late, Bailey Ober. That's my main guy. I think I'm going to jump on Trevor Rogers more with you for sure. I'd say I rank him. For me, it's Bailey Ober's my number 1. I'll put Verlander at number 2 for me. And then my number 3, probably not going to be, obviously I'll leave Rogers for you. I don't think I'm going to go him as my number 3 anyways. You know what I like a lot here? I think maybe he's like a good, safe option, nice floor ceiling combination. The only worry I have is that ballpark is, I like Jameson Taillon a little bit, but actually I'm going to switch it. I'm not going to go Taillon because I hate, it's the only game with wind blowing out, right? Why am I going to do that? If I'm going to do it, I'd rather go Zimmerman for his K upside and all the leverage. Let's go with Tariq Skubal, and that same game is Ober. I think a Skubal and Ober combo is a really nice combination you can go with today.
Yeah, it's gonna be a tough hitting environment in Minnesota today, no doubt about it. So yeah, Ober on my list. I've got him second behind Trevor Rogers, who is my number 1 point per dollar pitcher. And frankly, wouldn't be surprised if he's just the straight up number 1 pitcher when it's all said and done today. So Rogers 1, Ober 2. I will go Skubal 3. And then I do, again, we'll go revisiting that Chicago game. Still not clear to me if it's going to play without issue, but if it does, if you feel comfortable with the weather, Michael Kopech would be near the top of my list as well.
Yeah, I'm doing 10 on DK, 50 on FanDuel, and I think my pool's going to be Ober, Verlander, Skubal, and then maybe one other pitcher, like a Rogers. If I need to go that cheap, I don't know if I'll need to on FanDuel. Maybe Minaya. I have to look at that a little bit with the lineups. But yeah, overall, I think that's a good pitching pool. setup today. DC, let's talk about, I guess, plays of the day. Let's see how the people did on the likes. They got 161, so they got it home. DC, I'll have you go first. I'm assuming you'll give out a pitcher and you'll give out a hitter. Who is your play of the day?
Yeah, Trevor Rogers pitching for Miami. We've talked a lot about him on the show, so I don't need to continue, but I do expect a big performance from him against Washington. He's also super cheap, which is obviously always beneficial, but I think especially today where a lot of the bats that I want are pretty expensive. So he's the pitcher of the day. Hitter, I'm going Cedric Mullins. Talked about him in depth as well against Jamison Taillon. I think he'll be somewhat low-owned, power speed threat in a really good power speed spot, especially in comparison to the rest of the slate.
All right, pulling up this stuff now. I'm trying to figure out which guy to go for the hitter. I'll say pitcher I know. I'm going Bailey Ober. That's my guy. I'm rocking with him today. I'm attacking the Tigers once again. Seems like a pretty easy spot to do it. Let me see, just make sure I don't want to say the wrong guy in the Astros line because I want to go with an Astro. Let's see here. And I want to try, I don't want to put like Alex Bregman. I know he's like going to be one of those popular guys. Let's go with Gurriel at 3.6K. Like him at the first base position. First base is a good position today, but it's not like completely loaded. Like I know Ty France's hitting it great, but when we're talking about Ty France being probably the raw point guy, I don't know. It's there's no Vlad Guerrero in the lineup too on FanDuel. So first base does seem a little weaker. I'm going with Gurriel as my hitter, who's going to be my play of the day. DC, we got to talk about the White Sox real quick and the weather and the Royals. So pull that radar back up for me if you can. And then offer up your final thoughts here on this slate as well.
Yeah, weather still dry in Chicago. Rain getting closer, not there yet, and it's not clear. It looks like it's breaking up a little bit. So I wish I had a stronger take on the weather in Chicago. But hey, that's why you got to be a member for the site. I'll give my final take final take, obviously, before the game starts. That's still 2 hours from now. But we'll be monitoring that situation. Probably will take people off Kopech. So if you want to stick with him for now, maybe you leave that $500 like we talked about to be able to swap to Verlander if it looks too sketchy as we get closer to lock. But no definitive take from me on the Chicago weather situation. Overall slate offense, I think, is going to be hard to come by today. Try to get as much upside in your lineup as you can, which you can do if you go cheaper pitchers like we like with Trevor Rogers and Bailey Ober. So should be a fun day of baseball. Hopefully we'll get a little bit of offense at least somewhere.
Yep, should be a fun day. We got the playbook up, so be sure to check that out. Core plays, everyone's up except DC. He's been on the show though, right? So to be fair, we got Gary's up, Hoop, Uncle T. So go check those out. You do not want to miss out. Go sign up at Run Pure Sports right now. If you have not, check out SaberSim as well. We'll be sweating the golf. We got round 2 showdown. We got NBA stuff. We got all the winners coming to you today, but that is going to wrap it up for us. We got to go make our lineups. Thanks a lot for joining. For me, Mangone, and DC, we'll see you guys.